Welcome to Beyond the Needle, the Aesthetics Business Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Ruse. I'm a former clinic manager turned digital marketing freelancer, and I've had the privilege of helping dozens of aesthetic practitioners across the UK and beyond grow their business. So I know firsthand just how challenging it can be to build a successful aesthetics practice in today's competitive market. Each week, I'm here to share real, actionable strategies and bring on expert guests to help you level up, attract more patients, and build a standout brand. Let's turn your passion into a thriving business together. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Needle podcast. And this week I'm delighted to be joined by the amazing Dr. Hazel Parkinson, a GP and aesthetics practitioner with a keen interest in both cosmetic and clinical dermatology, as well as women's health. And she is joining me for a truly refreshing and insightful conversation that bridges the gap between skin, hormones, and whole person care. With over 2 decades of NHS experience, postgraduate training in dermatology, and a thriving private aesthetics clinic in Warwickshire, Hazel brings a rare depth of knowledge and compassion to the way she treats her patients. Her approach is anything but skin deep, combining clinical expertise with a genuine understanding of how stress, sleep, hormones, menopause, and lifestyle all show up on the skin. We talk about the transition from NHS medicine to aesthetics, what it looks like to treat midlife skin with nuance, and why more practitioners need to be thinking holistically, especially when it comes to perimenopause, aging, and long-term results. Hazel also shares her personal experience of navigating menopause, her journey to becoming CQC registered, and how bodybuilding has shaped her discipline, resilience, and ability to lead by example, both in clinic and in life. So if you're a practitioner who wants to bring more depth and integrity into your consultations, better support women in midlife, or simply learn how to blend science with a more holistic lens, this conversation is packed with wisdom and clarity and has something of value to give to everyone who listens. Before we dive in, I just want to remind you that if you do enjoy these episodes, please remember to subscribe so that you're notified every week when new episodes go live, and please do leave me a little review. I really do appreciate every single one of them. Okay, let's get into it. Hi Hazel, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited. Thank you.
Oh, excited to have you on and to hear more about your amazing journey. So can you tell us a little bit, just to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about your medical background and what first sparked your interest in aesthetics?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I'm a GP with specialist interests in dermatology and women's health, and I think my interest in dermatology particularly stemmed really from my childhood. My brother had really quite severe eczema and a number of quite severe food allergies, including anaphylaxis to nuts and egg, and just seeing how that impacted on him on a daily basis really just made me hyper aware of how skin conditions and your health in general can impact on your confidence and your overall well-being. So I think that's where my initial dermatology interest was sort of sparked. And it went on. When I had my teenage years, I suffered a little bit with acne. I became a little bit obsessed with all the different types of lesions. I think if Dr. Pimple Popper was around back in those days, I'd have been obsessed. I was that weird child. And then, I went to medical school, and initially I think I wanted to be a surgeon. I like doing things with my hands. I felt like I had a little bit of an artistic flair, and I just like doing procedures as well as doing the medicine side of things. But very, very quickly, as a junior doctor, I realised that surgery was not for me, because back then surgery was very much like the old boys network. Showing my age now, but there was really, it was quite rife with racism, sexism, misogyny, and it was not a world that I wanted to work in. I had a really good friend who was an amazing female Asian doctor, and she was incredible. She wanted to be a surgeon, and her consultant, who was supposed to be her mentor, told her that she was the wrong sex and the wrong colour to become a surgeon. And well, she's shown them, because she moved to Australia and now she's a consultant colorectal surgeon, so that showed her. But yeah, it it made me think, what else do I want to do? And what I liked the variety of things. I really loved my A&E job, but A&E wasn't for me because it meant night shifts, it meant working lots of weekends, and I thought in the future I want to have a family, that won't be compatible with that. So that was why I went into general practice, because I thought lots of variety, it will keep me interested, I can probably do some procedural work as well. And so that's why I went into general practice. And as part of my general practice, I did 6 months in obstetrics and gynecology. Absolutely loved it. I did a postgraduate diploma in obstetrics and gynae. I went on to do a diploma in sexual and reproductive health, learned how to fit intrauterine devices, contraceptive implants, removals, again, procedural stuff, like doing all that. And there was still this love of dermatology as well. So when I actually trained to be a GP, well, I took a year out. I had a year out to travel, because I thought if I don't do it now, I won't do it at all. So I had a year out. It was the best year of my life, and I went around Southeast Asia. I went around Australia, New Zealand, and South America. But it was also a really good time for me to reflect on what I wanted to do. And I didn't know whether I wanted to be a GP partner. That whole thing just scared me, but I knew I loved the dermatology side of things. So when I came back, I trained in minor surgery, I trained in dermoscopy. I then, a few years later, went on to do a diploma in clinical dermatology, and that really sealed the deal for me. I absolutely loved it. And actually, it was back then, and that was in 2012, that I initially thought about doing aesthetics, but I didn't. I think the fear of the unknown, the fear of running a business and setting up a clinic stopped me. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets, actually. But, these things happen for a reason. Instead, I stayed in general practice for 18 years and basically was on the edge of burnout when I decided something had to change. So I quit my salaried job, took on a job as a community gynecologist, which was a brilliant role and I absolutely love, and at the same time trained in aesthetics. And that's kind of brings us where we are today. So today I sort of divide my time between my private aesthetics and wellness clinic and my community gynecology job, both of which bring so much to me. It's a beautiful balance, really, because I think the women's health side of things keeps me kind of grounded in that women's health NHS work, while the private practice really brings in all my loves, the dermatology, the regenerative aesthetics, the hormone health, and really sort of empowering women to really understand their skin and understand their health on a sort of deeper level, really. Yeah. So that's where we are today.
Amazing. I mean, you've got so much experience that you've kind of collected over the years. Oh, I love it. And I love how you almost ventured into aesthetics, in 2012. So how long was it between then and actually getting into aesthetics? When was it that you
it was early 2023, so I've not been doing it very long at all. No, it wasn't. Sorry, I'm wrong. It was 22. But not been doing it very long at all. But I have trained and I have trained and I have trained. I spent an absolute fortune in those first few years on training, because I'm one of these people that if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. And so, I wanted to get as much experience as possible. And I think that's something that's really important for people who are going into aesthetics to do, not to just do a one-day course on non-surgical rhinoplasty and think that's it. They can do non-surgical rhinoplasty. You have to get lots of experience. And so I spent an absolute small fortune on doing lots of courses, but not just lots of courses, but also shadowing people and spending time seeing all that as well.
Yeah, and it'll be like a different world in aesthetics now than it would have been back in 2012, with all of the different kind of services that you can offer and the different treatments and products that are available. And how do you think your experience in dermatology has shaped how you treat your patients in aesthetics?
I mean, I think it absolutely does. I think, if you look at aesthetic? Well, first of all, I think that the starting point is to look at the dermatology, to look at the skin and how the skin is functioning. Because,
Yeah.
if your skin's not functioning well, if you've got an impaired skin barrier, if you've got slow wound healing, then you're not going to respond well to aesthetic treatments, and they're not going to last as long. So I always start first with looking at the skin side of things and getting that in the best functional state before we start looking at aesthetic treatments and things like that. So if they've got an impaired skin barrier, if they've got inflammation, if they've got acne or rosacea, that really needs to be treated before you start injecting them with fillers or things like that, if you want to get the best results, which obviously we do.
Yeah, amazing. So you're still actively working in the NHS while running your own clinic. How do you find that balance, and what does each role bring to your kind of professional life?
Yeah, I think as I said earlier, I think actually for me the balance is quite beautiful, because I think that the NHS part of it does kind of keep me grounded in the women's health side of things. The private practice brings together all my all my loves, and so yeah, my future aspirations is to just be able to combine all of that under the one clinic. So I can actually help women not only with their aesthetics, but clinical dermatology and also the women's health side of things, so that we can really treat them as a whole person rather than just the face that's in front of me.
Yeah, I love that. So the long-term plan is to have a clinic where you can offer all of these different services to women in one place.
Absolutely.
And how far into the future is that, or is that something that's kind of on the
Well,
horizon?
how long will CQC take me to do? So yeah, we're in the process of applying for CQC at the moment. And yeah, it's taken me about 6 months so far just to get to the point that I can get my application off. And that's with a consultancy agency that have been absolutely invaluable. But, getting all the procedures in place, and also a lot of things that needed to happen to the clinic itself, because the clinic itself wasn't a purpose-built QC clinic. So having to do things like changing the flooring and buying wheelchair ramps and changing accessibility and all that sort of thing. So that's taken me about 6 months to get to this stage, and I believe now I've got my application off, it's going to be another 4 to 6 months before I'll get an inspection. So yeah, once that's
Definitely not an overnight process.
process. It's not a process. It's not a cheap process. It'll be well worth it. And I think anyone who wants to provide, registered medical services, it's an absolute necessity to be able to do that safely and legally. So it will be worth it. But yeah, at the
Yeah,
moment, I'm in the
absolutely.
depth of it.
Yeah, but it will be worth it in the end. And one of the things I love about your approach is how you are trying, or how your long-term aim is to combine that kind of women's health, hormones, gynecology, all of those kinds of things all in one place. Because I think it's something that a lot of women who come for aesthetic treatments, they're in their 40s and 50s, it's something that they will really resonate with. And I think it's something that a lot of practitioners are considering bringing into their practice as we start to take this more full body approach to treatment, instead of just treating the skin and like the hormonal changes on the surface. How do hormonal shifts like those seen in perimenopause and menopause impact the skin in ways that more aesthetic practitioners need to
Yeah,
understand?
I mean, hormonal changes really do affect every layer of the skin. So estrogen, progesterone, androgens, they all have like specific roles. So when they fluctuate or decrease, as in perimenopause and menopause, you'll see very predictable patterns. So things like dryness, impaired barrier function, increase irritation, sensitivity. We get thinning of the dermis, loss of collagen, slower healing. You may get, pigment issues that you haven't had before, things like melasma. We see increased vascular problems, redness, rosacea, and menopausal acne and things like that. And all of that is related to hormonal changes, so decreasing estrogen, relatively increase in the androgens compared to the estrogen progesterone that's declining. And I think quite often I see women coming in who just feel like they've aged overnight, but they haven't. It's just their skin responding to these hormonal changes. Yeah, so I think having a greater understanding of that is absolutely essential, because how we manage it, it's not solely down to products or injectables. It is very much looking at this sort of, holistic side of things.
Yeah, so things like stress, sleep, lifestyle, and overall well-being, which we all know are quite crucial when it comes to managing the menopause symptoms. How do you incorporate those kinds of aspects into your consultations or treatment plans? And do you feel like people are quite open to that advice? Because I think with a lot of people, they expect, and correct me if I'm wrong, they come in and they kind of expect to use some skincare products or have some treatments, and that will fix all of the issues. But do you find people are quite open to making those lifestyle changes around it, and how do you incorporate that into their treatment plans?
So I think my patients can be quite open to it. One of the things I've learned through building my business is it's really important to know, who you're trying to attract. And, if you attract your people, you're the right person for them, and they're going to be more open to what you're suggesting. In terms of incorporating it, it really is a matter of asking these poignant questions. So, asking about menstrual cycles, asking about contraception, asking about perimenopause and menopause symptoms, screening for things like, have they got symptoms of polycystic ovarian syndrome, and looking at, as you say, sleep, stress, their daily habits, their nutrition, what exercise they do. All of this is absolutely essential. And in terms of how I go about it, it's not rocket science. So, I mean, I think most people will have a medical questionnaire that they send out to patients. But do you actually look at what's on that medical questionnaire? Because you can quite easily modify it to ask these sorts of questions. And that's exactly what I've done. So, I've basically written a medical questionnaire and it asks about all these things. So I've got that information even before they come. And yeah, sometimes patients don't answer it very thoroughly. But that's when you have those conversations in the consultation. So doing that, asking them about it, and yeah, really sort of taking a bit of a deep dive. And some people are open to it, some people less so. And, that's fine. But it's my job to keep chipping away. And, if they become regular patients, you don't necessarily get there first time. But if you keep talking about things like a high protein diet, or like doing a little bit of resistance training, and practice what you preach as well, then people will start to take notice, and they will start to listen and become more open to it. And that is when, you can really make huge changes for the patients, not just in terms of their skin, but also their hormone health, if they are perimenopausal or menopausal, how they manage that, and their overall health as well. So yeah, it's something I just chip away at.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to like looking and feeling your best, and not just like looking great on the outside because you're investing in great treatments and you're using the right skincare, but you actually feel really good as well, and you're no longer dealing with things like brain fog or tiredness or low energy. Yeah, I love that. And what advice would you give to practitioners who want to make or who want to take a more integrative whole person approach to their care but aren't quite sure where to start with
I'd
it?
say that you don't need to be a hormone specialist overnight, but you do need to look through a wider lens in terms of what you're doing. So asking those important questions, I said it before, asking about things like menstrual cycle, about contraception, about stress, about sleep, all these sorts of things are really important. And don't underestimate the power of really listening. If you give a woman enough space to talk, often she'll reveal to you what actually her underlying concerns are, what's often driving maybe skin problems and things like that. And don't expect to be everything, because having that holistic approach, you can't be everything. So knowing when things are outside of your remit and having a network of people that you can refer to is really important as well. I've genuinely have a little black book of people who I will refer to, if a lady needs a gynecologist, if, privately, if she needs a dermatologist, if she needs a psychotherapist, if she needs a nutritional therapist, if she needs a physiotherapist, if she needs a pelvic floor physiotherapist, a PT, anything, all of these things. I think it's really important. And one of the things that I've done with my business is, go to lots of networking so you can build up a little black book of people who are good at what they do and who you can refer people to. It's being able to recognise when a woman needs more than a bit of skincare or, an injectable, and that actually she needs another expert's input. So I think having that network as well is really important, as well as doing all the asking the right questions and things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice, having a little black book. I love that. And are there any particular skin problems or, conditions or concerns that you see most commonly in midlife
Yeah, so
women?
I guess it's things like volume loss, loss of underlying structure, changes in the skin, we lose collagen, and so the skin can become, saggier, we lose elastin, it can become less elastic, we get, as I said before, dryness, impaired barrier function, we can see those pigment problems coming through. Because of the changes that we see, they then start to notice things like more laxicity in the lower face and in the neck. So yeah, it's all those sort of common things that people will see day in, day out as an aesthetic practitioner.
And are there any treatments or protocols that you find yourself turning to the most for skin that is hormonally or age affected? And anything that you find to be particularly effective for treating those concerns?
I use a lot of biostimulators, things like Sculptra, Synacos, polynucleotides. I think these are really helpful in terms of, treating the skin from inside out, as it were. And, they help with things like hydration, they help with collagen production, they help with the skin texture. Polynucleotides in particular, I find are really helpful for chronically inflamed skin and for conditions like rosacea. I've had patients who literally have been seeing, secondary care dermatologists, had every prescription under the sun for their rosacea, and then they've had a course of polynucleotides and they've told me it's better than it's ever been in their entire life. So, I'm a big fan with that. And I think once you've got the skin better through things like medical grade skincare, introduction of things like vitamin C and retinoids, and making sure they're wearing SPF daily and using something like a biostimulator. Once the skin's in really good nick, then you can start looking at the structural changes that have happened, and you can, use hyaluronic acid dermal fillers. Not huge quantities. It's about, small strategically placed fillers that can, have a big impact just in terms of giving a bit more harmony to the face and helping with that laxicity and things like that. I'm a huge fan of Radiesse as well. So for me, that's absolutely fantastic in the lower face. I just think, the combination of it giving that structural support, but also having that biostimulating effect on the skin is just win-win. And again, just see some lovely results with that.
I love that. And I think, I've seen from people I've worked with the amazing transformations that you can have in hormonal skin, even just with skincare, like when it goes from not really having a proper skincare regime, or maybe just using things like face wipes to take their makeup off, and maybe like a bog standard moisturizer from Boots, going from that to then using just a good cleanser, an SPF, maybe a vitamin C and a retinol, like the difference that can make. And I think that's, I love that you said, it's kind of skin quality first. So focusing on the skincare and maybe adding in some polynucleotides to bring down the inflammation and the redness, and restoring kind of structure with the Radiesse before thinking about adding volume. And I think that's where aesthetics is moving to now, because once upon a time it was all about the volume and the filler and the Botox, whereas now a lot more people, or most people, are starting off with those biostimulators and the skin boosters and restoring hydration. Do you agree? Do you think that's the way kind of aesthetics is going to go?
Yeah, I think so. And if I had £1 for every time a new patient came into me and said, I'm open to suggestions, but I don't want to look frozen, I don't want to look fake, I don't want to look done, I just want to look well. Patients aren't looking to necessarily take 10 years off themselves. They really just want to look like they're not tired, like they're well rested. They just, want to maybe look a little bit fresher. And yeah, I think very much so. There's a lot of people now, and a lot of people sadly that have been scared off by fillers because of the historically some celebrities have maybe overdone it, and that's put the fear of God into lots of patients that all fillers will make you look overfilled, whereas you and I know that is not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've recently invested in your first device, which comes with a couple of different modalities. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What led to that decision? Why you felt you were ready now, and how you're kind of integrating those new treatments into your protocols with midlife women?
Yeah, it really boiled down to the fact that listening to my patients and listening to what they needed or wanted, and it just felt that there were certain things that were missing. A lot of people with complaining about lower face laxicity and things like that, and while I think Radiesse and things like that can be really helpful, I think having a high energy device as well can really help with that. With pigmentation, I can get some good results with medical grade skincare. I'm a big fan of Abaji, but there is only so much you can do. And so I think, introducing a laser, introducing, the radio frequency microneedling that I've introduced has just filled that little gap where I just felt I wasn't quite providing everything I needed to for my patients. And yeah, it was probably a good year of trying out different devices on myself, which is always fun, but also on my patients, and just trying to get the right balance of one which worked but didn't have too big a downtime. Because I think some of the devices that we tried, although we got the results in my patients, they would say to me, I wouldn't have it again because the downtime was too much. So it was sort of getting that balance. And I think I found that with the device that I've got. So yeah, I'm happy.
So tell us a little bit about the device that you chose in the end, and how has it been received by your patients so far? Because it's still quite new in your clinic,
It
isn't
is,
it?
yeah. I only got it in September. So it's the InMode Optimus, which has the Morpheus 8, so the radio frequency microneedling, which obviously you can do quite a lot of different things from, resurfacing to, actually helping with fat coagulation and things like that. And also the Lumica IPL, which is fantastic. I always had my eye on getting IPL for the rosacea side of things, but I think I probably underestimated how good it is for
Yeah.
pigmentation as well. It's amazing.
I've seen
So
some really incredible before and afters, even from
yeah,
just one
yeah.
treatment. Like, it's
Yeah,
amazing what it can do.
I got some pigment on my forehead. I went to Glastonbury in the summer, and despite wearing a hat and SPF all day every day, it was 30 degrees, and well, I got a bit of pigmentation, and I was furious with myself. How dare I get pigmentation? But we blitzed it one session, and it just completely disappeared. So yeah, happy
Amazing.
days.
How did you, so when you launched the device into the clinic, how did you kind of get people interested in it initially? Did you do any launch offers? Tell us a little bit about the launch and how you're kind of working to pay back that device now.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the thing to say before you buy a device, because they are a big investment, and particularly if you're someone like me who's a single-handed practitioner, you've got to do some serious number crunching before you get it, because I've worked out how much it's going to cost me to pay this back over a 2-year period, how many treatments I will need to get over that period. And I'm on target at the moment, but I'm only 3 months in, and there's probably been an initial sort of flurry of activity. So, I think that you have to do your research, look at who else is providing it around you and things like that. And then when you do launch it, targeting it from all angles. So, it's been in my email marketing. I've got a wonderful lady that does my social media. You might know her, Emily. And, she's been putting lots of it on there for me, and yeah, bringing it up when patients come into the clinic as well and talking about it. And then I'm planning on doing at the beginning of next year another demo evening, because I think they always go down really, really well. So yeah, having a demo evening where we'll do some sort of not quite launch because I've had it a while, but semi-launch offers as well, I think will help. But you've got to keep the momentum going with it all.
Love that. Amazing. So going back to kind of the initial days of setting up in aesthetics, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into launching your own clinic space? What was the vision and what made you feel like it was the right time? Because you've always kind of had an at-home sort of practice. It's separate to your house, but it's at home. How did you kind of go about deciding on the location, and how did you kind of bring your vision to life?
I'm really fortunate in that I live in a really picturesque Warwickshire village. My house backs onto like rolling fields, the garden backs onto a farmer's field with sheep in it, and we're surrounded by lots of other small neighbouring villages not far from Leamington Spa. And when we moved into the house in 2020, it was, the previous owners had created this beautiful modern outbuilding in the garden, which when I saw it, even though I hadn't started training in aesthetics then, I was like, that's going to be a clinic for me one day. I was initially thinking I was going to do just private dermatology, but I absolutely had my heart set on that being my clinic because the location is so beautiful. And my patients really like that sort of discreet, private nature to it. It is, so far from a high street shop front, and they love that.
Yeah.
And pretty much every new patient that comes to the clinic will comment on, what a beautiful view you have. You must feel so lucky. And I genuinely do feel so lucky. And it is about providing a space that my patients feel comfortable, they feel safe, they feel relaxed. And I do that, it's not just about the views, but I like to take in all the sort of senses really. So having, nice relaxing music playing, having my own scent, having that gorgeous view, it really helps people just to relax, take a deep breath, and just be completely themselves. So yeah, that was my vision.
I love that. And now you're going through the process, as you touched on earlier, of turning it into a CQC registered premises.
Yes.
All your amazing future plans. So can you share what that's been like so far and what you've learned from it for anyone else who is considering going down the CQC process?
Yeah, so CQC has been quite the journey. Yeah, I was scared to start, and I think I was thinking about it for a long time before I finally did start to go down that process. And actually it was through speaking to a consultancy agency who works specifically with CQC that made me realize that maybe I could do it, and they've been absolutely invaluable. So I think, unless you are one of these people that can spend hours and hours and hours writing protocols and things like that, then absolutely get a consultancy agency to help you. I would also say be aware of how long it takes time wise.
Yeah.
I said it's taken me 6 months just to get to the point where I can actually get my application off, and I think it's going to be at least another 6 months probably before I get inspected. And also, whatever you budget for it, double it. I budgeted quite a bit, particularly with regards to what the consultancy agency was going to cost, what the actual CQC registration and the ongoing cost of CQC. But I didn't factor in the fact that I would need to buy a defibrillator, that the flooring would need to be changed, that I'd need to, as I say, get all these accessibility things changed, wheelchair access and that sort of thing. So yeah, it can be quite expensive. But whilst it has been difficult, I can totally see that it's going to be worth it. So don't fear it, but just get some support, I would say, with going through that process.
Yeah, I think that's important, and something a lot of people I think underestimate until they're kind of in the thick of it, and they then wish that they'd done that from the start. But yeah, I think it'll be totally worth it in the end for you. So talking about your own kind of health journey, you are really into your fitness. You have done bodybuilding and you've entered bodybuilding competitions, which is amazing and such a commitment. Tell us a little bit about that and how that's kind of helped you in your own journey.
Yeah, so it's funny how a lot of people will talk about bodybuilding as, oh, you're so disciplined. For me, it isn't discipline. For me, going to the gym and doing strength training is my absolute joy. It's my reset. It's the thing that takes me away from, stress of family life, stress of running a business, and just makes me feel more grounded. I think there has never been a time that I've walked out of the gym in a worse mood than when I walked in. Those endorphins really are absolute magic. So for me, there is no sort of discipline or willpower. It's more a case of, if I can't go, then I'll get really on edge. So yeah, I think for that side of things, I'm just really fortunate, because I absolutely love it. When it comes to bodybuilding competitions, yes, absolutely, a lot of willpower and discipline is involved in that. The food prep side of things, and you have to do a lot of increased cardio, you have to train posing and all that sort of thing. And I guess for me, that's where my ability to hyper focus kind of comes in. If I'm in, I'm all in, and that's how I am with a lot of things. So yes, it does require discipline, but I'm all for that. And I think in terms of how it impacts on my business, just simply by going through and doing that weight training, it makes me more resilient, it gives me more energy, it gives me mental clarity, and that just helps, because it means I can then bring that through to my work and showing up for my patients.
Yeah, and do you find that, because obviously you share a lot of that journey on your social media, and I'm guessing you talk about it with patients naturally in conversations, do you find that patients are, because I'm guessing you're probably a similar age to a lot of your patients or your target audience, so they can relate to you with the kinds of perimenopausal changes that they're going through, and they can see that you're going out and you're exercising and you're doing it. So it is, possible at that age to build muscle and to enter competitions and to take that holistic approach that obviously you really preach in what you do. Do you find that patients are more open to making those lifestyle changes themselves just from seeing that you embody what you
Of course. I
teach?
mean, we all appreciate authenticity, don't we? You have to kind of practice what you preach if you want people to take you seriously. I remember when I had my first baby and I went for my postnatal check at the GP surgery, and the doctor said, "Oh, your weight's a lot more than it was, and you need to think about losing weight." But this particular doctor was really obese themselves, and it was hard for me to take that seriously coming from them. So I think you do need to practice what you preach, and absolutely it opens that whole sort of conversation. So I think I said it before, I like to drip feed my patients a little bit. If you go all in with, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, then they might just feel overloaded, and it feels like too much. And particularly for midlife women who are looking after children, elderly parents, trying to run a household and do their best in their career, and you're telling them that they need to get 8 hours sleep a day, and they need to drink at least 2 to 3 litres of water, and they need to eat X amount of protein. That can just be completely overwhelming for them, can't it? But I think just opening those conversations, drip feeding it through on my social media, on the consultations and things like that, and people will take it on board, and that will change things. It will change how they experience their menopause. It will massively improve their long-term health and things like that. So yeah, it's just a case of keep, as I say, keep chipping away.
Are there any particular things within women's health that you wish kind of more women understood, or you wish the industry spoke about differently, or that you'd like to see the back of? Is there anything that springs to
Yeah,
mind?
I mean, not necessarily in women's health, but for women in general. There's been for years, and the thing is, you do still see it now. This sort of thing about shrinking yourself. Women want to be slim, and it's okay to not want to carry lots of body fat, but actually being slim and not having much muscle mass is going to do you a lot of damage in the long term, in terms of your bone health, increasing your risk of osteoporosis. Sarcopenia in general, sort of low muscle mass, has an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. It has an increased risk of cognitive decline and just general frailty in later life. So I think trying to get that message through about the importance of building muscle is just really essential.
Yeah. Do you, well, I'm guessing you don't offer it, but because you're not CQC registered yet, but Ozempic, I mean, changed the way people are losing weight, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a great tool for,
Yeah,
everybody who
yeah.
wants weight or needs to lose weight. And I think as well, it's a great tool for women in their 40s and 50s who are going through menopause and perhaps find it harder to lose weight, than they once did. But are you seeing, I think, that like I say, it's changing the way we lose weight. And it's very easy to lose a lot of body fat and muscle, which you've just said there is an issue. Are you seeing a rise in that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern, isn't it? And I think there have been some studies that would suggest that it does increase the risk of things like osteoporosis. But I've also seen some studies which have suggested that actually the amount of muscle that you lose compared to the fat isn't quite as much. But I think this is where it's so important. And certainly, when I do get CQC registered, if I go down the route of weight loss treatments, it has to be as part of a bigger picture of lifestyle measures, because if you just go on Ozempic or Manjaro and it reduces your appetite and you're just eating smaller quantities of chocolate, then really that's not doing your health any good. So it's really important that people know that they still need to have high protein diet, sensible supplementation, that they need to be doing some resistance training more so than ever, because as you say, the risk otherwise is that they will get sarcopenia as well. And that's the worry, I think, with some, maybe online private places where you can get skinny jabs, is that they don't have, that whole sort of education as well with it, which is just vital.
Yeah, there's no patient care involved. It's literally just you receive the medication, you administer it yourself, and really you make your own decisions without guidance. So, how do you manage your time, your energy, and your priorities between managing, a home, a busy clinic, your role in the NHS, and all of these other things that you want to do, being a busy mum? How do you find that you manage, what works for you to manage your time whilst growing your business and avoiding burnout?
Yeah.
Work in
I wouldn't,
progress.
I wouldn't say, yeah, absolutely, it's a work in progress, and I wouldn't say I've mastered it at all. I can, quite regularly feel like I'm teetering on the edge of burnout, but it feels so different to where I was when I was a GP. So, I am in a happier spot. I'm doing what I want to be doing, and it's more burnout because I'm getting so into it and actually throwing myself all in. But again, for me, it comes back to having your you time, which for me is the gym. If I didn't have that in my life, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to achieve everything that I do achieve. I wouldn't be able to show up for my family. I am, as you've hinted at, menopausal myself, and it helps with your mood regulation, it helps with your energy levels, and it helps with your focus and everything. So for me, that's probably the biggest thing. But yeah, very much a work in progress, and I wouldn't say I've got it completely mastered.
Yeah, but finding a way of, I don't know, I guess managing your stress outside of, the clinic and the home, like for you, that's the gym. For other people, it might be going for a walk, but I guess it's just important to have that downtime. Yeah, amazing. So as we kind of reach the end of this episode, just a couple of things to mop up. For anyone listening who feels quite inspired by the things you've said, regarding women's wellness and hormones and taking a more integrative approach, I guess, to the skin, who wants to perhaps start introducing that into their own practice, do you have any recommendations on where they can start with
I
it?
guess it does depend on your level of training and education in that area. If you don't have much training in, for instance, women's health, then learning the basics about things like polycystic ovarian syndrome, about perimenopause, about post-pill physiology, that sort of thing can be really helpful. And then asking the questions, asking the right questions. Yeah, I think so often, if I just ask the right questions, I can get to the root cause of what's causing a patient's skin problem before I've even touched them, examined them, anything. So I think yeah, asking the right questions is really, really important. But also, learning a little bit about these things. If you really want to go down the route of women's health and that side of things, and actually maybe incorporate things like menopause care, then you have to do training. The British Menopause Society do a certificate which is covers most things, and then they do an advanced certificate which covers the more complex things as well. So there is that. Yeah.
Amazing. And looking back into your own journey, is there anything that you wish you'd done sooner or differently when you first started in aesthetics?
Where do I start? I think
Oh,
I think starting in aesthetics sooner would have been good. I think one of the most invaluable things for me was getting a business coach. I think the first year I was flailing around, not really knowing what I was doing at all.
yeah.
And she was an absolute game changer for me. Just, from the start, just the basic things like I wasn't taking a booking deposit. I didn't
Mm,
even have set working hours for my clinic, to then, building my reputation a little bit more, getting me out of my comfort zone, speaking at conferences, writing for journals, going on podcasts, these sorts of things that I probably wouldn't have done without that kick up the bum to do it. So she's been absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I think getting a business coach has probably been one of the game changers for me.
I love that. I think a lot of people resonate with that because it's I think there's so much to it when you're setting up any business, let alone aesthetics, and there's so much to think about, and it can be really overwhelming. And how do you
Yeah.
know going from working in the NHS to then taking like you say, something simple as taking a deposit, but you don't necessarily think about that. I think you're having someone to help you put those processes in place and just to hold you accountable to things as well, like putting yourself out there, which I think is really scary for a lot of people. Do you think that having her guidance has really helped how you've kind of approached putting yourself out there and getting yourself known and showing up for opportunities? Do you think you would have done as many of those kind of talking things if you hadn't had that guidance?
Absolutely not. Yeah, I think, like a lot of people, public speaking absolutely doesn't come naturally to me. And initially I
Yeah.
was terrified of it. But the more you do it, the better you get. But I think being held accountable in all aspects of life, with my bodybuilding I've got a coach, with my business I've got a coach. But I think that can really help with people with all aspects of their life. So yeah, I think being held accountable, being pushed in the right direction has been amazing. And also, she really made me think about my perfect patient, and I think that's been really important, because now the people that come into me, as I sort of was hinting at earlier, are often a lot more open to my suggestions, and they come to my clinic for me, and we build really good relationships as a result of that. A lot of my patients now, I do think of as good friends, and I I'm really fortunate, I think, to be in a position that you can get to know what's really going on in a patient's life. So yeah, I think looking at who your perfect patient is and then trying to attract them is also great, because you're not going to get the time wasters or the people that are just looking for the cheapest option and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that. What would you say has been most effective for you in attracting that perfect patient? Is it the way you kind of show up online and the things you talk about resonate with the right kinds of people, and then more of those right types of people come to you and therefore refer more of those right types of friends and family members that they
Yeah,
have?
exactly that. And I do lots of sort of reward schemes and things like that for my patients. I have and again, thank the coach for this, have a sort of referral system. So if a patient refers in a friend, they'll both get 10% off their next treatment. With my email marketing, I think most of the people on the email marketing is actually patients.
Mm,
And so again, they will get, certain offers and things like that, which I don't necessarily give to
yeah.
Joe Blogs public. So yeah, they're rewarded for their loyalty, and yeah, and I think they really appreciate that in the same way that I really appreciate them.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. And just can you give us one quick tip on how to improve your confidence in showing up on camera, because I think this is something that so many people struggle with. And like you said, you know, it's not your favourite thing to do. You're not a big fan of public speaking. Yes, your business coach has massively helped you in holding you accountable, I guess, to showing up. But is there anything else that you found helpful, or is it just the mindset that you kind of put yourself in and push yourself to do it?
I think mindset, you know, imagining it going well and not overthinking or necessarily over preparing. You know, I think if you over prepare, then you can come across a little bit static, not you know, a little bit not quite right. And just really simple things like having a glass of water, taking a little sip if you need to consider the question, that sort of thing. You know, I have things like that. Even when I'm, you know, speaking at conferences, I'll have a glass of water, because I think if I just suddenly go, because I get perimenopausal brain moments too, if I suddenly go blank, you can just have a sip, you know, and even say things like, that's a good question.
Yeah, just to give yourself some breathing space.
So things like that. But it's just a case of putting yourself out there, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And I wouldn't say I'm the best by any means. I you know, speaking at conferences, I'm sometimes just like, I'm so privileged to be on stage with these people. They're such, you know, such amazing speakers. But, you know, you just got to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and also not aiming for perfection, because I think that's where people, you know, especially when it's like something like putting a video out on social media, you record it, you edit it, you watch it back. Whereas when you're on stage at a conference, you don't really get a chance to redo that. You have to show up, and that's that. But I think a lot of people put off putting content out there because they'll record it, watch it too many times, think to themselves it's not perfect, compare it to other people's videos. But I think just doing it and then accepting that you're going to learn as you go is like the best way to approach it.
Yeah, and I think everyone does that, don't they, when they start out with social media? They're
When they're
like,
starting,
I still cringe at myself now, but you know,
yeah, we all do.
get on
Yeah,
with it.
yeah, but no one else is watching our videos in the same way that we watch them. You know, no one else is looking at us and thinking, oh God, that sounded stupid, or, you know, no one else is judging us like we judge ourselves. And I think that's the most important thing to remember. Oh, this has been such an amazing episode. Like, you've given so much great advice. Thank you so much for coming on. For anyone listening who wants to learn more about you and what you do, or your approach, or maybe connect with you and ask you questions, where's the best place to find you?
Please follow me on Instagram. It's Dr. Hazel Skin Solutions, or other social media. My website is drhazel.co.uk, so pretty easy. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hazel.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.